Van myne na grond, hoe waarskynlik is grondgrype. Brian Whittaker, uitvoerende hoof van Vumelana Advisory Fund, was betrokke by die uitdink van 4 moontlike scenario's vir grondhervorming en herverdeling in ons land. Brian, welcome. Do you think this is the year of action? The ANC has been making all kinds of noises about land grabs and expropriation.
Well, I certainly think it's going to be a year in which land reform is politically high on the agenda. Unfortunately, land reform is a complex issue, and action depends much more on the institutional arrangements, the resources, and the ability to bring a large number of people into the process. So it's one thing to say that this is a year of action. It's quite another thing to make the action happen.
Because in these 4 scenarios that you and your team looked at recently, an expedited land reform program was looked at. One of them included land grabs. What do you think are the likelihood of that, and why would that happen?
So these were 4 scenarios. And the significance of this is not that they are predictions, which they are not, and they are not proposals. But what we did is we got together a very diverse team. So about 40 people, traditional leaders, academics, senior government people, private sector people, and asked them what they think could happen. So it's important to see the scenarios as a set of 4 things that this very diverse group thinks are possible. One of them, as you point out, was called confiscation. And so each of these scenarios tells a story. And the confiscation story is about ordinary people becoming tired of waiting. You know, there are landless people's movements that develop. Eventually they occupy the land, and as the story plays out, the government caves in and changes the constitution to legalize the occupation of land without confiscation, without compensation. That was just one of the stories, though.
Now, there's a less crude version of that, which you refer to as land capture or land hijacking. What is that about?
So this is the capture of land by well-connected people. And the way this particular story plays out is that, once again, starting in the difficult circumstances, we started this about a year ago in 2016. So in the difficult circumstances that we're in, lots of political pressure, the ruling party is looking for allies, especially in the rural areas. They decide that what they will do is do a deal with traditional leaders, and they do a sort of land for votes deal, as a result of which the people who benefit from all of those are those who are connected to the political process through these traditional leaders, and everybody else is a loser.
Is this not already happening?
Well, this is the really interesting thing. So, you know, out of these 4 scenarios, there's evidence of them all, in fact, happening. So you can hear people talking about occupying land, and it's happening in some cases. There are cases where there are discussions and traditional leaders are saying, we want more, we want the title deeds to the land, and so on, and there's talk about that happening. But the other 2 scenarios are also in play. So the 3rd scenario was about concentration, where the current concentration of land in a relatively small number of white hands shifts to the concentration of land in a relatively small number of black hands. So the racial profile changes. We achieve the objective in that regard, but actually the majority still feel left out. So that's the 3rd. And then the 4th one we called hard bargaining and compromise. This is where the process is opened up very significantly. The government creates opportunities for very many more people to participate. There's a commitment to inclusiveness, so that people who are not usually at the negotiating table are brought into the process, and tough deals are done. The essence of this, though, is nobody gets everything they want. People can't just hang on to their land. You also can't just occupy the land. The government can't just make promises and not keep them. So everybody has a chance to get around the table and strike some deals.
But this last scenario of compromise and negotiation sounds very much like what commercial agriculture has been arguing for a while. You know, we offer assistance to upcoming farmers, and why has that not already happened? You say there are elements of all of these four present, but this sounds like it has been the plan all along.
Well, there's much more of this happening than people realize. And I think, you know, part of the sort of raising of land reform on the political agenda is backed by assumptions and claims that nothing is happening. That's not true. The government's land reform program is showing progress. We've transferred about 8 million hectares during the life of the program, much slower than we said we would, and not nearly fast enough to meet post-liberation expectations. But something is happening. On the side of, you know, farmers coming to agreements with their workers, current landowners striking deals with people who want land, our experience in the Vumelana Advisory Fund is that there is much more of that's going on than people realize, and there's much more potential for it. Many more people would do that if they were given the opportunity and the support.
So, Brian, why does government not trumpet these successes that you've found around the country instead of only emphasizing the slow progress?
That's an odd thing. You know, there are many areas, I think, where the government, in a sense, is its own worst enemy. This shouldn't be misinterpreted. There's a lot wrong with what's happening in land reform, and you can't just put a veneer over that. But we must be much clearer about what's going right and what's going wrong, and we have to get the right diagnosis if we're going to get this to accelerate.
Do you think, just very briefly, that does the law allow the President tomorrow night in his State of the Nation address to announce a radical policy shift in the government's approach to land redistribution?
Well, the President will announce what the President will announce. The point of this, though, is that what will actually happen on the ground depends much more on whether we've got the resources. So what actually comes out in the budget speech, I think, will be a really important indicator.
Support so far from government, Brian, in land reform projects for upcoming farmers? How would you rate that?
Well, this is mixed. To be honest, it's mixed. I mean, and the level of failure, the government's very well aware of this. The level of failure after land is transferred into the hands of the people you're talking about is very high. So there are success cases and there are models that we can build on, and there are much too many failures, and the process is moving much too slowly. If we're to change this, we must get more resources and we must simplify the procedures.
Well, thank you very much. Dit was Brian Whittaker van Vumelana. So kom ons aan die einde van vanaand se uitsending. Ek sien julle weer volgende Woensdag aand, maar skakel gerus môre aand in vir 'n deeglike blik op die staatsrede saam met Betty Kemp. Goeienaand.